Japan at a crossroads as constitutional reform looms. Where is the country headed?
The emperor wants to step down and the prime minister wants to step up his conservative agenda. Both are sensitive subjects with the potential to reshape Japan. I'm Malika Bilal.
I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream.
I'm a survivor of Hiroshima. I'm in the stream.
先の大戦に対する深い反省とともに、今後戦争の惨禍が再び
You just heard Emperor Akihito speaking at a ceremony Monday marking the 71st anniversary of Japan's defeat in World War II.
It was his first public address since he suggested in a rare video message last week that he wants to step down. Under the Constitution, he's not allowed to abdicate and is supposed to serve the people until he dies.
When Japan's pacifist constitution was forged by the United States in the aftermath of World War II, the emperor was stripped of his divinity and political roles. Emperor Akihito took the throne in 1989, and since then he has been a symbol of peace and unity, quietly taking on taboo subjects like expressing regret for Japan's treatment of the Chinese during the war and acknowledging his own Korean ancestry.
Well, today, Emperor Akihito is making waves again, suggesting the world's oldest monarchy should be modernized. At the same time, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is pushing his own modernization plan. His goal to revise the post-war constitution became possible just last month when his party won a majority in the upper house of parliament, clearing the way for the right-wing reforms he seeks. But Abe's conservative supporters worry the abdication issue could divert political energy from his agenda.
So what does this mean for Japan? With us to help us discuss this in Tokyo, Japan, Amari Yamamoto is a special correspondent for the Daily Beast. Also in Tokyo, Jake Adelstein is an investigative journalist who has been living in Japan for decades. And in Seoul, South Korea, Alexis Dudden is author of the forthcoming The State of Japan, Islands, Empire, Nation, and also a history professor with the University of Connecticut. Good to have you here, everybody. Mari, the Emperor of Japan, the royal family in Japan. How do people view it?
How do people view the imperial family?
Yeah.
Well, first and foremost, he does not have any political power, so he is he stands as a symbol of what post-war Japan is, meaning pacifism. And Japanese people mostly, I would say, support and admire the emperor, not in the worshipping way that was how it was during war times, but in a more sort of like a nation's father sort of way, and look to him for consolation during trying times.
He is like, in a sense, what you wish State Farm Insurance actually was. Like, when there's a crisis, the emperor is there. He goes to disaster sites, he sits down with the people, he talks to them. He is concerned and progressive and has a soothing voice, and he goes wherever there is trouble, and he is the voice of rationality and reason and wisdom. And I think that everyone respects him, though ironically, they rarely listen to what he has to say, especially the right wing. It's a wonderful contradiction.
So picking
And
up
also,
on... Go ahead, Mari.
yeah, also in terms of numbers, there aren't any polls to show you how many people support the imperial family specifically, but after last week's speech Emperor Akihito made, sort of hinting at his wishes for abdication, the polls said that 89% of the people support his abdication. So I think that says a lot.
So earlier, Mari had said that the word symbol, that the emperor is a symbol. So Alexis, I'm going to go to you with this because that's something that a few people picked up on. So this is one person who says the emperor is the symbol of Japan. And of course, the emperor also used that term several times in his speech. And this tweet also goes on to say the sovereignty resides in the people. We select the prime minister and revise the constitution. Another person, just picking up on that theme of the emperor and being a symbol, Akio says most monarchs have no actual political power, but they prevent the runaway of democracy by gathering the people's respect. So, Alexis, what is that respect, and do you think that this person is accurate in that the emperor garnered that from most of society?
The emperor is indeed the symbol of the nation. And as Jake said, he is an insurance policy, but he's an insurance policy with a conscience. And so he's gone out of his way throughout his tenure to acknowledge the atrocities that the Japanese troops committed during the war, while at the same time recognizing the suffering of Japanese during the war. And this is a really delicate balance that he's done in a remarkably apolitical way. So it's tricky because to praise the emperor's actions means that we are recognizing his political nature, which he himself wants to eschew by being very much one with the people and one that is a symbol and not a political actor.
So Jake, when you read between the lines last week, what were you reading? Were you hearing, I want to retire?
I was hearing the emperor state what he said before. I was hearing him say that the importance of balance of family and livelihood are important, that Japan needs to modernize. But what I was also hearing is that, him touching upon themes that he's touched upon before. If you will humor me, I'm going to read a 2 paragraphs that he said in 2013 on his annual birthday press conference, because in that he covers everything, both Japan's responsibility for the war and the fact that the Constitution of Japan isn't imposed upon Japan by outside forces, and that it's an important part of the country. So these are the emperor's own words translated to English. Give me 30 seconds to read it out loud to you, because it tells you everything that
Jake,
he has
you
been
got 30
saying
seconds.
for
Nice
most
setup.
of his career.
Go for it.
Okay. All right. Regarding the questions on what events have left me with special impressions over the past 80 years, I would say that what stands out most in my mind is the Second World War. Japan was already at war with China by the time I reached school age. The following year, on December 8th, Japan also entered into war with the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Netherlands, in addition to China. I was in my last year of elementary school when the war ended. About 3.1 million Japanese people are said to have lost their lives in that war. It still pains me deeply to think that so many people who must have had various dreams and hopes for the future lost their lives at a young age. After the war, Japan was occupied by the Allied forces, and based on peace and democracy as values, important values to be upheld, Japan established the Constitution of Japan, undertook various reforms, and built the foundation of the Japan that we know today. I have profound gratitude for the efforts made by the Japanese people at the time who helped reconstruct and improve the country devastated by the war. I also feel that we must not forget the help extended to us in those days by Americans with an understanding of Japan and Japanese culture. In that statement, you have the emperor saying, we started the war, we went to war with the United States. The United States came in and they helped us establish a country where democracy and peace were important values, and based on that Constitution, which we have now, we have the great Japan that we have now, and we should be grateful for what has come and all the people who have helped us get there, and let's not have another dumbass war or change the Constitution. I mean, that's the subtext.
So Jake, one of the things it mentioned in that statement was Constitution that the emperor mentioned. So online, people are talking about the potential for constitutional reform. Here's one of the ways that might happen. This is a comment we got from Ben. Have a listen to what he said.
The question is, can the parliament make the necessary changes to the imperial household law to allow abdication without raising other questions? One question is the possibility of female succession, which was debated in 2006 but abandoned after the Crown Prince's brother and his wife gave birth to a son. Another question is the constitutional role of the emperor, which is currently prescribed as the symbol of the state and the unity of the people, but with no direct role in politics. But this is something that Prime Minister Abe's right-wing supporters, such as in the Nippon Kaigi, would like to change.
So Mari, I see you nodding there a little bit. What do you make of those potential places for reform?
Potential places for reform. In regards to the imperial house laws, it's included in the constitution that everything that has to do with this law must be passed through Diet. So this is something that has to be that is going to be debated in the Diet in the sessions opening in September, which is interesting timing. Since Prime Minister Abe reportedly was planning on pushing forward his Article 9 reform. And in terms of priority regarding the emperor's age, it's not wise to wait on this since he has made his feelings clear. So this will most likely become their priority or topic of debate in the sessions in September, which will push back the reform debate on Article 9. So we saw it as a tactic of pushing back the timing of this. But anyhow, sorry, what was the question again? I kind of went off on a tangent.
I think you answered it.
Could I pick up on something?
Alexis, go ahead.
Because what Mari has said is really important, and because again, the emperor himself does not want to be a political actor, and yet if we compare the beautiful words that Jake read, and also think about the speeches of last year's very much watched 70th anniversary speeches, August 14th last year, Prime Minister Abe went to great lengths to underscore that the suffering of dead Japanese is what brought about the peace and democracy, actually not the democracy, but the peace and success of post-war Japan. The next day, August 15th, the emperor said actually the hard work of post-1945 Japanese is what built the Japan we have today. So very much recognizing this fundamental transition. So what Mari's also noticing is that the rest of the world has focused on Article 9, on changes to the Japanese military as the focus of constitutional change. Whereas if you look at the debates over constitutional change since the early 1990s in Japan, the focus has really been on definitions of the emperor and his role as head of state and or his or her role. But the right wing, the Nippon Kaigi, comes out of a position that really wants to put the emperor back at the center of power, redefine religion almost in a 1930s model. And that's what has made the current emperor deeply uncomfortable. His son, the crown prince included, have quietly made clear their opposition to returning to that position. And
Alexis,
so this is kind of a genius move. Yeah.
People do tend to focus in on Article 9, but there are more issues at stake here. I'm just looking at a bit of the draft constitution, and it actually talks about the duties of the people, freedom of expression, but any of these rights that have been afforded to the Japanese people, if I'm reading this correctly, is as long as it doesn't affect public interest. Yes. And then that's so vague. That's incredibly vague and potentially very disturbing.
Dangerous. Well, and they've also they've reintroduced a term, obligation, which is a really sort of 17th, 18th, 19th century Confucian term for what the role of a subject, not a citizen, is in this milieu. And so this notion that a citizen's rights, if the Abe view of the world were to pass, a citizen's rights are contingent on the obligations performed, which include defending the territory of Japan for the first time. We've never seen that in Japanese constitutions before. So there's and then especially upholding the emperor at the center of state power. And if a citizen henceforth were to eschew these obligations, he or she might lose his rights. And that's something that really, as Jake was alluding to earlier, we need to pay attention what this outlier group, again, not a majority position in Japanese society, but the minority position that has commanded the airwaves in recent years is now shaping as the discussion for Japan moving forward. So it's really vital to recognize opposition voices and also the quiet, silent opposition that doesn't necessarily express itself as much as those of us outside Japan wish it would.
You know, Alexis, it's because of some of those opposition voices that we are hearing, especially online, that there seems to be a sense that there's tension between the emperor and Abe. So this is a comment we got on Facebook from Matt. He says, there is absolutely no tension between Emperor Akihito and Prime Minister Abe. He follows the constitution, meaning the emperor, whether it remains in the current pacifism form or is changed by the will of the people. So that's one hand. On the other hand, this is someone who says there is tension, and this is what it looks like. This is Akai.
This is Akai. The reaction to the message made by Emperor has been rather divided. Shinzo Abe and his friends in government are not so happy about the idea of Emperor stepping down while he is alive. On the other hand, Japanese liberals and left-wing people are basically keeping wait-and-see stance. They are reasonably reluctant to use Emperor to defend the constitution. So the political situation since the message has been rather fluid, and its influence is also still open to debate.
So Jake, how imagined is that tension?
It's real tension. Okay. I've been a reporter in Japan since 1993. And let me tell you the interesting sort of backstory to this emperor's abdication announcement. That the emperor wanted to abdicate and step down is not news. Shukan Shinsho reported it 3 years ago. They said the same things that NHK did. Very accurate article. And suddenly, 3 days after Prime Minister Abe is gloating about the fact that now he can change the constitution, something that he said during the elections that he was not interested in doing, that wasn't a main point of the elections. Suddenly NHK gets such a solid lead on the emperor abdicating that they decide to run this story and everybody follows. And NHK is one of the most conservative news organizations in Japan, and Abe has appointed two of his extreme right-wing allies to oversee it and make sure they don't report anything that is disadvantage to them. As a matter of fact, the current head of NHK, Momoi, once said, if the Japanese government says it's left, we can't say that it's right. So when NHK drops this bombshell that the emperor wants to abdicate, the chief cabinet spokesman, Suga, called in the NHK reporters and chewed them out for several minutes. He was furious. And NHK had to run this story. And I have friends working at NHK because someone very, very high up in the imperial household fed them that story. And then they went with it. So it's definitely politically timing. And it's not news. So why does it happen 3 days after Abe finally has enough people to institute constitutional reform? Because somebody in the imperial family decided now is the time to derail that.
So Jake and Amari, one of their most recent collaborations is this on the Daily Beast. The Emperor Strikes Back. Japan's monarch takes on imperialist Abe. I'm just wondering, Alexis, do you see it that way? Do you see the Emperor's speech last week, do you see it as a strike back for the man of the people?
I think it is a man of conscience, a man who has traveled throughout the South Pacific to atone for war dead, both sides of the war. I think this is a man who takes very seriously his role in coping with his father. And I don't mean to be psychological about this, but in his father's name, 20 million Asian lives disappeared in sheer violence. And he has spent his entire career, which is what he sees it. He is a symbol of the state, but he has referred to it as his job, basically. His job is to atone for that. And this is where, the tension to me is, it's actually almost a Greek drama, if you forgive the analogy to ancient Greece, but we've got two men on stage, and the men are Prime Minister Abe and Crown Prince Naruhito, and both of them have serious grandfather legacies. Prime Minister Abe's grandfather, Kishi, is a Class A war criminal who was purged, and he was able to return to power, but Abe is very clear in his writings and his speeches that his main mission is to exonerate the legacy of his grandfather.
Alexis, just pause for a moment, because I've got a picture here. This is the Prime Minister Kishi, and this is with his grandsons, Shinzo Abe on the right, and then his brother, and this was back in 1957. This is some legacy that he's living up to.
It's huge. He talks about sitting on his grandfather's knee.
As he was right
also
here.
he talks about, exactly, and he talks about being bullied at school because of who his grandfather was. He makes it very clear that his mission is to make sure that not just the world, because he doesn't really care about the world, but the Japanese people know that his grandfather was not the monster he was. And so this is his mission, and it's very weirdly played out in his, again, this is based on his writings and his speeches, not my imaginations, but his writings and his speeches make clear that he wants a military, a proactive military for Japan, something his grandfather also wanted, that they see the emasculation of Japan visited upon the Japanese people by the American occupation, who stripped Japan of its ability to go fight war abroad, and that he, Shinzo Abe, will rectify the situation by sending Japanese troops abroad. Although what's very strange, and he did say this actually in Parliament last summer when he was trying to pass new security legislation, he doesn't think Japanese troops will get killed. So he talks about these sort of bloodless wars that are based in no one's reality.
You know, Alexis, I hear what you're saying, but there seems to be this disconnect here because you mentioned, of course, the opposition being sort of small. This is a tweet we got from Naomi. She reiterates a point that someone else has made. She says, it's just that we don't see any connection between the emperor's desire to step down and Prime Minister Abe. Another video commenter, I want to just play this because this is that same theme kind of echoed here. This is Yujiro, who's been on the stream before, has pretty lucid thoughts on this. Have a listen to what he told us.
I emphatically refute the wishful thinking by the Western media that Emperor Akihito wants to abdicate to defend the Constitution. I mean, this is baseless, hilarious, and misleading. Japan needs to revise its Article 9 for one simple reason: to face the imminent military threat by China. We have Tokyo with this 1946 Constitution written by the Americans that says land, sea, and air forces, as well as any other war potentials, will never be maintained. I mean, this is like living in a house without a lock. Ladies and gentlemen, Japan needs to defend the rule of law.
So Jake's eyebrows rose there, and I see Alexis kind of smiling. Go ahead, Alexis.
Jake can have this one, but the Constitution of Japan already provides for the defense of Japan. There is nothing that needs to be changed about the Constitution in the case of this imagined Chinese imminent attack, which is not going to happen. First of all, the supposed peace constitution, as we have come to understand it, was a mutually agreed upon clause by former Japanese Prime Minister Shidehara and General MacArthur. So I kind of like Yujiro's MacArthur-like microphone to make these demands, but the Japanese Constitution already allows Japanese land, sea, and air forces, which are world-class, to defend Japan.
Jake?
I would have to say, Alexis just said it very beautifully. I would also have to say that, you know, this misconception that the Constitution was enforced upon the Japanese by the U.S. is a myth that the right wing loves. The emperor himself refutes it. It was a mutual thing. I'm not going to go into a long argument of how the Constitution was put together, but all the politicians who were running for office when the constitutional first draft was around were basically also being measured for their support for the Constitution. The right wing loves to say that this was imposed upon the Japanese, and it's not all about Article 9. The Liberal Democratic Party has created a new draft of the Japanese Constitution, and Abe's former Minister of Justice at a meeting held in 2012 in front of Abe and many other cabinet members made this incredible statement. It's like, I'm not happy with the Liberal Democratic Party's new draft of the Constitution of Japan because we need to get rid of basic human rights, popular sovereignty, and pacifism. And that's kind of an incredible statement and a scary one. And that's the level of these guys. It's like, we need to be able to go to war so that we're more masculine, and we need to have our own constitution, and we need to make sure the peasants don't have a say. I mean, look at the mentality of the Abe administration and the religious cult Nippon Kaigi that influences so much his cabinet members is that we are
Jake,
the elite.
Finish your
we
sentence
know better.
right at the end of the show.
Oh.
Jake Adelstein, Alexis Dunn. Amari Yamamoto, thank you so much for being part of this program. I have to tell you, when we did this show right now, it is live at this moment, but not when you see it in the replay. Our guests got up so early, and what a very interesting conversation they gave us at a super early time in the morning. Thank you so much for being part of the stream. I'll see you online. Take care, everybody.